Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information will be U.S. Note 6.12, Clinton's Presidency. It includes information that aligns with the final section on your Unit 6 study guide. Now remember to use your study guide to help you control the lecture and figure out what's important. Pause, write down any questions you have, and rewatch if you need to. Let's go ahead and get started. As you learned in the last set of notes, President Clinton promoted more involvement by the government in many areas. Today I will give you more information on these areas and exactly what kind of involvement he was promoting. So first let's examine Clinton's domestic actions, what he did here in the U.S. One area where President Clinton made an impact was on trade, particularly trade within North America. Clinton was responsible for pushing through and supporting an act known as NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement. This act, passed in 1994, allowed for free trade with no restrictions, limitations, or taxes between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, or North America. While many feared it and all American companies would move their operations into Mexico because it would be cheaper, others hoped it would increase trade and competition, stimulate the economy, and result in a stronger American economy. One of the reasons Bush did not get reelected was the deficit, $132 billion, and a struggling economy. So a stronger economy was definitely seen in the 90s by most Americans. In 1995, 96, 97, and 98, America had a balanced budget. We did not spend more than we brought in, we balanced it. And after years of deficit spending and increased debt, this was seen as an enormous success for Clinton. Even more, President Clinton managed to have a budget surplus, or extra money, in 1998. What? Yeah, I said it. That was something the country had not seen in decades, and it definitely has not seen since, but it definitely helped the U.S. economy and increased positive feelings towards the president. Riding on these feelings of goodwill, President Clinton made some massive changes to welfare in 1996. Mandatory work, time limit benefits, no new job training money, tougher child support regulations, pregnancy prevention regulations, teen parent requirements. These were all put into place with welfare. Americans actually liked these changes. They felt like then their money was not being recklessly spent now that these regulations and controls were placed on the welfare recipients. So this welfare reform led to fewer caseloads for welfare workers. The decline in the number of recipients of welfare was seen as a success for Clinton and his presidency. Also in 96, Clinton attempted to pass health care reform. This was heavily supported by the First Lady, Hillary Clinton, but failed to pass at the time. So remember, the first time we saw a president attempting to pass this type of reform was Teddy Roosevelt back in the early 1900s. So it was not a new idea, and we know that it continued to come back up over and over again throughout the 100 years before it finally passed. So overall, it sounds like Clinton was doing pretty well as president, right? Well, he did have a few challenges. The conservatives had a comeback in the 94 election. Newt Gingrich led this conservative movement under the Contract for America platform, a platform that laid out what they could do to fix America. Now remember, in 94, Clinton had not yet balanced the budget, so Americans were not quite as supportive as they were later in his presidency. Now the conservative challenge was difficult for Clinton because the Republicans then had control of the House of Representatives. That would ultimately lead to the impeachment of President Clinton in 98, which we'll look at in depth in the next set of notes. But overall, know that the Republican conservatives were challenging Clinton and pushing him throughout his presidency and making it a little tougher for him to do what he wanted with his policies. Now in foreign affairs, Clinton continued the new focus of human rights. In 92, a civil war broke out in Bosnia. Two groups were fighting for control of the former Soviet area. This actually led to an attempted genocide, and the U.S. had to develop a plan to deal with these kind of human rights violations, and they had varying successes with their plans. So in Bosnia in 92, the U.S. kept ground troops out and used offshore missiles to try to stop the genocide. That failed. So then in 93, Somalia had a civil war, and a very similar thing happened. So the U.S. tried a different plan. We sent in military support, but fighting got so bad that the U.S. had to withdraw the troops. Maybe you've seen Black Hawk Down about this, the movie? That actually covers this. So Somalia fell to anarchy and remained extremely dangerous for decades, and even still today, parts of it are dangerous. So again, the U.S. policy failed. So then, after trying both of these actions, civil war broke out in Rwanda the following year, in 1994. So the U.S. had to try yet another policy, and in this case they tried no involvement. So many of you learned about this in geography and know that this resulted in a genocide. So the new foreign policy area took many attempts to find the U.S. role in the world. As you can see, in the 90s we struggled to find that right role. But we didn't give up, we learned, and we adjusted. So in the Middle East, Clinton and the U.S. also met with some struggles. In 93, Clinton set up some tentative peace agreements between Israel and Palestine, but then in 95, bombings ended that peace. And then in 98, there were more attempts at peace, and again, bombings stopped that. So Clinton continued to work on this throughout his whole presidency and tried to have better relationships there. Another action of Clinton's presidency that was tied with the Middle East was the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. There was a bomb, a truck full of explosives, which was parked in the parking area under the World Trade Center by a terrorist group. The bomb exploded, damaging the building severely and killing 6 and wounding over 1,000 people. It was an attempt to collapse the entire building, which failed, but it was an attack on U.S. soil which really hit Americans hard. The issues that America had been facing with places like Iran, Palestine, and other Middle Eastern countries now hit home. This was a precursor to future events. And you'll learn about those later because this is the end of Note 6.12. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you in class.